And good evening. We want to get right to breaking news that's happening here on Top Story. The particularly dangerous situation, or PDS, that has millions in the South on high alert. That designation from the National Weather Service reserved for the most serious of threats. And you can see those bands of red popping up in parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. 17 million people under alert with the possibility of long-track nocturnal tornadoes through the night, the most dangerous. We've already seen some funnel clouds this afternoon, possible tornadoes spotted in Louisiana. I want to get right to Bill Cairns, who's going to lead us off tonight. He's at the big board with the radar. Bill, walk us through what we're expecting tonight and in the coming days.
Well, with this storm, I mean, we were looking out yesterday at this time, knowing that we could be in for a really serious situation. That has developed. So far, we've had 6 reports of tornadoes. All of them have been in the state of Mississippi, a couple to the north here between Yazoo City and Columbus, and then down to the south between Macomb and Hattiesburg. We've had numerous tornadoes reported just in the last half hour or so. I have not heard any reports of any large-scale damage, no reports of any injuries or fatalities, but we have heard some reports of at least of some damage that has been done with these to the north up here. And this one went just to the north of Starkville. It did miss the campus, and I know a lot of people were nervous about that about an hour ago. So where do we go from here? Well, we were mentioning the PDS, the potentially dangerous situation. This, by the way, is only the second time this year that they've issued what they call a dangerous area for tornadoes. And that's why they issued the PDS. They saved that for the most serious of consequences. And it doesn't mean it's going to materialize, but at least the potential is there. And so far, we haven't had what appears to be any long-track, strong tornadoes. And that's what the fear is from now till about maybe 10, 11 p.m. this evening, when that threat will get lower. So the tornado watch goes all the way up here from northern Mississippi, Columbus. Tuscaloosa is included into the tornado watch now, Demopolis, also to Monroeville, Hattiesburg, and then all the way back into central Louisiana. So we got a large section of the South, and this goes till midnight tonight, that tornado watch. One area that we've been watching closely, we've had 2 tornadoes reported with this supercell thunderstorm that just went through Collins. And here's Laurel. This is Interstate 59. There's Hattiesburg here. This is a possible tornado located right where my finger is, and a lot of storm chasers are on this storm. It looks like it's going to move northwards up to the east of Bay Springs in the next hour or two, so we'll be watching that closely. Other areas of concern as we go throughout the night, we'll push this east, and the tornado threat will eventually diminish. We'll be talking severe winds and also large hail, and that includes areas from Nashville, all of the state of Alabama. The tornado threat's primarily in Mississippi and maybe western sections of northern Alabama, and the area of greatest concern for those tornadoes, the ones that we're watching right now, includes that central Mississippi area into northern Tupelo, all the way back up into Florence, and maybe 1 or 2 strong ones the rest of the evening. So here's how it plays out. This is at 9 p.m. this evening. All the bright red shows you where all the thunderstorms are located. The one good thing is these storms are moving about 50 miles per hour. This will be out of here early tomorrow morning. Here's 8 a.m. in the morning. Still some thunderstorms in southern Georgia, southern Alabama, and then we'll just watch a rain threat heading up through the northeast. Watch out for airport delays and travel delays, New York City to Boston at 5 p.m. for the evening commute home. But of course, Tom, the main concern is the tornadoes threats this evening. 6 reported so far, but up to this point, we have avoided the catastrophic tornado, which is still possible over the next couple hours.
Bill, if we can go back to your live radar for just a second there. I was noticing the tornadoes that have touched down, they're happening in clusters. Is that normal?
What we're seeing is we get supercell thunderstorms, and what they do is, there's a lot of storm chasers out there, and they're likely seeing the same tornado. That's these 2 reports here in Bassfield. So, yes, it is common in these events when you get these long-track supercell thunderstorms, they can produce multiple tornadoes. Now, the thunderstorm itself may not produce the tornado on the ground the entire time. It may be on the ground for maybe a couple minutes. It lifts up, then it comes back down. So we'll wait and see if we get some new tornado reports with this storm system as it tracks here into areas of central and north central Mississippi this evening. So, again, a dangerous night. There are all these people in these tornado warnings. The sirens are going off. They're taking their families into their bathrooms, into their safe rooms and their shelters. And that's scary for little kids and everyone else, too.
Across the South, millions bracing for that severe weather and the possibility of those nocturnal tornadoes through the night. NBC's Sam Brock reports tonight from Jackson.
Significant tornado threat today.
Tonight, as much of the South braces for the terrifying prospect of tornadoes, it's a sudden reality for residents in Louisiana as a tornado has already touched down. And in Alabama's Muscle Shoals, chairs and furniture being sucked away by wind and rain. In this region alone, some 17 million under threat of severe weather sweeping through a corridor of major southern cities and capitals, where nocturnal tornadoes are 2.5 times more likely to be deadly.
What concerns you the most? tornadoes are the most concerning. But not only that, straight line winds. Straight line winds can be just as damaging as a tornado. It can take down a tree and take your house out as well.
In the command center of Mississippi's Emergency Management Agency, a fully activated team stays in touch with some 80-plus emergency directors and prepares shelters. All of it not far from Jackson, where only months ago, flooding caused outages at 2 water treatment facilities, spawning a water crisis.
Tornado could take it out. Flooding could also disrupt it as well.
And the active weather has only started tearing through parts of the upper Midwest. Americans bracing for the next 24 hours.
Hey, Sam Brock joins us now live from Jackson, Mississippi tonight. So, Sam, how can residents really stay informed as they get through this dangerous night when power may be knocked out and the threat of tornadoes all around them?
Charge your phone now. That would be my first bit of advice. And you talk to experts. Nocturnal tornadoes, Tom, are downright scary. They say there's a few things you need to know going into the event, which is, first of all, where is the safest space in your house? Make sure that you have food, water, and shoes there, Tom, in the event that you need to leave your house in the middle of the night. Also, those notifications. You want to go to the notification section, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, and scroll down and find out where it says public safety alert or emergency safety alert, and make sure that it slides to the green side of things so that you receive them, because it could literally be a difference of life or death if you're not getting those National Weather Service alerts. And turn up the volume on your phone as well, because it could be in the middle of the night, and you want to make sure that you hear the alerts.
Yeah, and then, Sam, obviously, we always worry about the people living in mobile homes. I know you're not too far from a mobile home park where you are.
That is correct. And this is kind of a shocking statistic. So you have about 6% of U.S. housing stock in total that's made up of mobile homes. There are 54% of the deaths from tornadoes related to mobile homes, which is to say there is an extremely elevated risk of danger. You look over my shoulder, it's going to be hard to see from where you're standing, but there's a park over there with campers and mobile homes. You see some of the lights on. That is not where you want to be in the event of a situation like this. And it's also worth noting, Tom, the South in general, especially places like Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, they over-index nationally when it comes to the amount of mobile homes. So please be careful. And if you can leave, do so.
Okay, Sam Brock in the storm zone tonight. Sam, we thank you. As we stay monitoring that severe weather, we do want to turn now to politics. A major development out of the Republican Party following the fallout over former President Trump's dinner with white supremacists Nick Fuentes and Kanye West. GOP leaders, Representative Kevin McCarthy and Senator Mitch McConnell, criticizing the meeting between the two today publicly, but doing it in 2 very different ways. There are just 2 more names among a growing list of GOP lawmakers and possible 2024 presidential candidates condemning the former president's latest move. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale joins Top Story tonight. And Ali, we're now hearing from these Republican leaders. I first want to play what Senator McConnell had to say earlier today. Let's take a listen.
There is no room in the Republican Party for anti-Semitism or white supremacy. Anyone meeting with people advocating that point of view, in my judgment, are highly unlikely to ever be elected president of the United States.
So that last part there may be the most important. McConnell condemning Trump without saying his name. This falling pretty much in line with what other Republicans have said. What more are you hearing today, at least out of the Senate, Ali?
Well, look, on the Senate side, the conversation is different than the one happening in the House. Not shocking to see Senator Mitch McConnell go at Trump this way, even if he's not saying his name. There's no love lost between these men. McConnell doesn't have any real political ramifications to consider. He's already on Trump's bad side. He's able to go at him directly. But the situation over here on the House side for Kevin McCarthy is much different. And you heard it from McCarthy outside the White House today after meeting with President Biden and the rest of congressional leaders, coming out saying that Trump didn't know who Nick Fuentes was and saying that Trump condemned Fuentes, even though that's not what Trump has done. But look, McCarthy's calculus on this is very different, Tom. He's in a battle to become the next House Speaker. He needs to cobble together 218 votes to do that. He has to battle within his own party to get the votes that he needs. He definitely can't afford a battle with President Trump now, too.
Yeah, and that leads to my next question. Let's hear what Representative McCarthy said earlier today. Let's play that.
I don't think anybody should be spending any time with Nick Fuentes. He has no place in this Republican Party. I think President Trump came out 4 times and condemned him and didn't know who he was.
Well, he just said he didn't know who he was. He didn't condemn him or his ideology.
Well, I condemn his ideology. It has no place in society.
So, as you point out there, Representative McCarthy calling out the meeting but still defending the former president. This is not a real surprise, Allie, right? But why do you think still some Republicans, do you think they're fearful of Trump, or they just want to make sure they keep that MAGA vote in line for them? We know Representative McCarthy wants to become the speaker, and he has to make sure he has every vote he can get.
Look, I think it's both, Tom. You and I covered the first presidential campaign for Donald Trump, the second presidential campaign for Donald Trump. We have seen these inflection points specifically around white supremacy in the past. Back in 2015, remember, that week-long news cycle where he would or wouldn't disavow David Duke. We then saw it rear its head again after Charlottesville, where he said good people were on both sides. Then during the 2020 election, when he told right-wing groups to stand back and stand by. And now, again, we see this inflection point. Republicans have had repeated chances to take the off-ramp to disavow Donald Trump as the leader of their party, and they have not done it, at least not consistently, and it hasn't stuck. The difference now, though, Trump is so much more politically weak than he's ever been at any point. Certainly the fact that he's not in office anymore should make it easier for these other Republicans to condemn him. But you're right, there's a fear factor here because Trump has such leverage over his base. And there's also the question of political ramifications. We've seen, even just in the last midterm election, just several weeks ago, that any of the lawmakers who went against Donald Trump after January 6th, most of them aren't coming back to Congress. So all of those things are stewing here. As most Republicans agree morally this was wrong, but only some of them are willing to go the next step and say that Trump probably won't be president again and shouldn't be the leader of the party.
You know, Ali, you mentioned 2016, and I am getting flashbacks from that campaign where it seemed to feel like the former president was bulletproof during that campaign, right? His base and then more and more Republican voters kept sticking with him even after he did outlandish things. So I want to ask you, is this time different? I mean, will this matter by the time the Iowa caucus or the New Hampshire primary starts for the 2024 cycle?
Gosh, that is such an eternity from now. You and I know that a year in politics is like 12 years to everybody else. So much can change over the course of the time that it'll take to get from right now in calendar year 2022 into calendar year 2024 when these candidates are campaigning in Iowa. I think the thing that's different here is we are seeing a willingness from some in the Republican apparatus to go at Trump here. For example, former Governor Chris Christie, a former ally of Trump, saying that this is another reminder of his lack of judgment. Governor Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas, someone else who might challenge him in 2024, saying that this is something that needs to be condemned, and he also hopes that we can get to a point where Republicans won't have to answer for Trump anymore. We're seeing from former Vice President Mike Pence saying that Trump should apologize, though you and I know that Trump is not one to apologize for anything. There are people, though, who might actually challenge him on paper so that people, when it does come time to vote, have other options. That's something that we haven't seen before, at least not yet.
Okay, Ali Vitale from Capitol Hill tonight. Ali, we appreciate it. Up next, we're just a week away from that crucial Senate runoff race in Georgia that will determine the extent of Democrats' power in the Senate. All eyes are turning to the state, and Vaughn Hilliard is there with the latest.
Tonight, with 1 week until Georgia's critical Senate runoff, there's already a massive turnout of early voters. More than 300,000 on Monday alone, a record.
Let's get this thing done.
Democratic incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock trying to hold on to his U.S. Senate seat and fend off Republican challenger Herschel Walker.
I am heartened by the robust turnout that we are seeing, but I don't want us to get too comfortable. These elections tend to be very close. Every vote counts.
Walker speaking on Newsmax Monday, saying he expects to win big.
Being in a runoff is something I think I was built for. I think Raphael went out a little bit surprised after spending the amount of money that he spent.
In the general election, Walker got public support from former President Trump. This time, he's getting help from recently re-elected Republican Governor Brian Kemp. Kemp got 200,000 more votes than Walker earlier this month. Walker will need some of those votes this time around, something even Walker's supporters are skeptical of.
Mr. Warnock is a wonderful individual, and I fully expect that he will win.
And as somebody who's voting for Herschel Walker, why do you say that?
Realism.
Why is Georgia going to vote for Raphael Warnock?
Mainly Mr. Trump. It astounds me how much we have let the Republican Party be influenced by Mr. Trump. There are a lot of Republicans who wish Mr. Trump well, and may he truly stay away from us.
Now, Trump has no plans to campaign with Walker this last week. Democrats will already maintain control of the U.S. Senate next year, but a Warnock win would give them cushion.
I voted for Raphael Warnock because I seen the change that he been making, helping people with the medicine, stuff like that, elder people and stuff, because it costs so much for them to get their insulin stuff, and no people really need it. So it was important to come out and vote.
That's exactly what Warnock needs. On Monday, Dave Matthews performed in a campaign concert in Atlanta, and on Thursday, Warnock hosts former President Obama for the second time.
Okay, Vaughn Hilliard joins us now live from Locust Grove, Georgia tonight. Vaughn, I want to go back to something that you reported at the top of your story there. Talk to us about the political calculation you think Governor Kemp has made here. Herschel Walker is a Trump-backed candidate. Kemp and Trump were at odds to the point that Trump wanted him gone. That didn't work. So is Kemp just staying loyal to the party here?
Look, for Brian Kemp, Herschel Walker is the Republican, and Brian Kemp is about to serve 4 years as governor, and he sees the potential of having a Republican Party partner in the U.S. Senate for 6 years. And the hope for Brian Kemp and for other Republicans like him, recall that back in 2020, much to the ire of Donald Trump, he certified Joe Biden's win in the state of Georgia. That's how really he grew on difficult terms with Donald Trump. But he stood his ground and ultimately won the share of votes here among not only Republicans, but also independents and Democrats here, despite him pushing back against Donald Trump in the past. And he hopes that there is a future for the Republican Party that is not encompassed wholly around Donald Trump. And so with the reality that he's about to serve his 4-year term, this could be a key ally for him, and why you see him now on the campaign trail and why Donald Trump is not out here for these closing days, Tom.
Vaughn Hilliard on the campaign trail there in Georgia. Again, Vaughn, we appreciate it. We turn now to the major headline in sports overseas. The Men's World Cup heating up as teams advance out of the group stage. In a winner-go-home nail-biter, the U.S. defeating Iran 1-0, advancing to the round of 16. But the game's hero, Christian Pulisic, now in the hospital, getting scans for an abdominal injury. This as controversies continue at the world's biggest tournament. Covering it all for us, of course, is NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald, who joins us live tonight. So, Megan, talk to us about this big win, because there was so much in the lead up to this game, both politically and on the pitch as well.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. So many distractions for these players. But when you looked at this game, you could really see their heads were in the game. They left everything on the field. And I can tell you, the fans are so excited. American fans flying thousands of miles to see this, to see Team USA pulling off the win and now advancing to the knockout round. So on Saturday, they're going to be taking on the Netherlands. Of course, there's a lot of concern around star player Christian Pulisic. But he sent a picture from the hospital I want to show you. And then he said, I'll be ready Saturday. Don't worry. So that's definitely encouraging for fans who are going to be cheering Team USA on Saturday, hoping that they'll pull off a win.
Yeah,
Tom?
Great news, because the team definitely needs him. This tournament, of course, has been no stranger to human rights concerns, right? And today, a top Qatari official put the number of worker deaths for the tournament. This is kind of hard to believe, somewhere between 400 and 500 people, much higher than the previous estimate. What more have we learned about this controversy, and how did this happen?
So, you know, Tom, all of this is still unclear. The number is unclear. We know that Amnesty International has said that thousands of migrant workers have died. We know in the past, as you mentioned, Qatari officials said it was between 30 and 40. Now they're saying about 400 to 500. What we know for sure is that Amnesty International has called on the Qatari government to investigate, and they say that they've not yet done that. But that is something that they're calling for, because the numbers are still unknown. There's families around the world that want answers to these questions. But at this point, we still don't know for sure, Tom.
Megan Fitzgerald reporting from Doha tonight for us. Megan, we appreciate it. From Qatar to the U.S. and to the millions watching and rooting for Team USA, Americans glued to the TV enjoying the game despite political tensions between the two countries. NBC's Lindsay Reiser is with some fans in New York tonight.
Tonight, World Cup mania in America. Team USA victorious in an all-or-nothing matchup against Iran. A tense match that began days before they stepped on the field, with political tensions between the two countries playing a central role. But today, the focus was on the pitch. From New York City to Reno to Kansas City. Americans taking a break from work, glued to their TVs as football fever took a hold nationwide.
Just excitement, everyone, the anxiety of it, just watching the game. Like, you don't know what the outcome could be, but it's so intense. It's amazing. I love it.
This is the best team in my life that the U.S. has had by far.
After coming into the game feeling confident following their decisive victory over Wales, Iran's World Cup dreams coming to an end. And after tying with powerhouse England in their last game, Team USA arrived with the need to win. But in the end, a beautiful goal by star Christian Pulisic, putting the U.S. ahead, his first goal ever in a World Cup. Fans in New York seeing today's game as an example of Team USA's potential.
Team looked great. A lot of confidence, a lot of pressure in the first half. Dominated for sure.
This dad, a diehard fan, attending every World Cup since 1994. This year, cheering from home alongside his family.
But we held strong. We held strong. We're going to round 2. Let's go. Round of 16. We're going to take the Netherlands. Go USA!
If the U.S. men's team beats Netherlands in their match on Saturday morning, they will advance to the quarterfinals for the first time since 2002. Back to you.
And we will be rooting them on. All right, Lindsay, thank you for that. For more on the World Cup, the controversies, and the international politics at play, I want to bring in Jules Boykoff, a former professional soccer player and professor of politics and government at Pacific University. Jules, thanks so much for joining Top Story tonight. I guess my first question is really simple. Why did the World Cup get so political this time around?
Well, there's a number of reasons, and a lot of them have to do with the host country, Qatar, who, as you just reported, has serious issues around migrant labor abuse and even death. And so that's worked up a lot of dissent around the world around the placement of this tournament. Second, FIFA, the world governing body for soccer that oversees this tournament, they've been mired in corruption scandal after corruption scandal. Also one that has to do with Qatar. There's serious allegations of bribery there. So a lot of attention has been going there. Third, we're living in the athlete empowerment era right now. So there are more and more athletes speaking out in socially conscious ways about political issues.
You think this is good for the game?
I do. I think we can live with that complexity. I think we can juggle the realities of politics and also slow down and appreciate these amazing athletes on the stage. Most people that say they don't want their sports and politics to mix, quite honestly, are milking the mega event machine with both hands, meaning most of them are making their money off of the Olympics or the World Cup.
But Jules, if you're a fan and you're surrounded by all the politics already, you're living the politics day in, day out, those culture wars, you're seeing it on the news, you turn on sports, and sometimes you just want an escape. Is it impossible to escape this now at this moment?
I think it largely is impossible. After all, U.S. Soccer themselves made a statement the other day ahead of the Iran game where they erased the emblem at the center of the Iran flag, a gesture that caused a whole furor across the internet and also around the world. And so, you know, you can live in that fantasy land if you want that politics and sports don't mix, but then you're just going to be extra disappointed when they do.
I mean, what did you think about, though? Was that a smart play? Because it ended up, I don't know if it hurt the Americans later on in that news conference where they had to answer some tough questions about racial issues in this country, and the mirror was sort of turned on them. I just wonder if it's hard for them to sort of balance both, and I understand they can walk and chew gum at the same time, but if you really want to win the World Cup and you're answering questions about social and political issues day in, day out, does that affect athletes as well?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And a lot of people who've been following this found the gesture a little bit clumsy. But I would say it's also markedly different than other kinds of protests that we've seen at this World Cup. For example, when Iran stood in silence during the national anthem in their first match against England, that protest was directed back home. It was meant to be in solidarity with the people in Iran. We've seen athletes from Denmark come and want to wear human rights for all T-shirts to their practice sessions. That's more targeted at the host country, like we're talking about. It's very rare for one participant in the World Cup to take aim at another participant. And perhaps that was these players were experiencing the dissonance from that and the difference of that.
There was an issue over armbands that players wanted to wear to show their support for LGBTQ. And I wanted to ask you, the head of FIFA didn't seem like he was very happy about all of this, right? The armband simply said love, and the criticism that FIFA had, the head of the organization fired back as well. What do you think happens in the future? Does FIFA eventually cave? Do they let politics and the issues of social justice enter this tournament and enter the sport?
Well, going on what they've done in Qatar, no, because basically they've run interference for the Qatari wishes at pretty much every turn, whether it was beer, which they decided to outlaw at the last minute. Don't get me wrong, swilling beer is not a human right, or whether it's what you're talking about right there, where they basically performed the wishes of the Qatari government. The thing is, there's more and more pressure on these organizations like FIFA and the International Olympic Committee, the group that oversees the Olympics, to change and be more open to athletes being able to speak out. They're going to continue to see pressure as we move forward out of this World Cup. And I have to say, it's really interesting. At this juncture of a World Cup, it's actually quite rare to have the politics still thrumming through the discourse. Usually we've moved on to the football or the soccer, and we've left the politics behind. So this could be a sign of the future, where politics and sports are ever more threaded, even in the throes of the exciting sports matches.
You're 100% right. It's almost like the news and the sports and the controversies are all sort of battling the headlines for supremacy there. Jules, we love having you on the show. Thank you so much for your smart take on this. We really do appreciate it. We want to turn now to the looming rail strike that we have been covering and talking about here for really months now. It's threatening to take effect just 2 weeks before Christmas. Tonight, President Biden pushing Congress to step in to avert a shutdown, which could cripple the economy. NBC's Tom Costello has this one.
Tonight, rare bipartisan agreement that the lame duck Congress must intervene to head off a potentially crippling rail strike on December 9th. From the president,
it's not an easy call, but I think we have to do it. The economy's at risk.
To the Republican Senate Minority Leader.
I think some may be inclined to vote against it, and others are arguing that the economic price doing that is too great.
The showdown comes after 8 unions agreed to a White House brokered deal with freight rail operators, but 4 unions voted no. If one goes on strike, they all do. Congress has the authority to impose a deal, but Democrats risk alienating a core constituency.
I don't like going against the ability of unions to strike, but weighing the equities, we must avoid a strike.
The chief concern, a rail strike could cost the economy anywhere from $500 million a week to $2 billion a day, depending on who is doing the analysis. Stalling the supply chain filled with everything from food to fertilizers, clothing to appliances, car parts to Christmas gifts.
When you look around your house, the majority of items that are in your home came on rail.
Some commuter railroads and Amtrak could also be affected. The White House negotiated deal offers the unions a 24% pay hike, though many workers say it still fails to provide sufficient time off or paid sick leave.
It doesn't matter how much money you make if you can't spend time at home or you can't be homesick.
But the unions may soon have a contract that many actually voted against, with the House expected to act first thing in the morning to end a strike before it even starts. There is an irony here, and that is 30 years ago, there was a similar scenario involving a rail strike in Congress, and Senator Biden at that time voted against Congress intervening. Now as president, he's advocating for Congress to intervene, arguing that this time the economy is very much on the line. Tom?
When we come back, the verdict just in related to the January 6th Capitol riot. Members of the far-right group, the Oath Keepers, found guilty of seditious conspiracy. The lengthy sentences they could now be facing. Stay with us. Back now with Top Stories newsfeed, and we begin with the deadly crash into a fireworks store in Florida. Video shows the building erupting into flames after a car crashed into the explosive store on Monday. Florida Highway Patrol said a crash in a nearby intersection caused the SUV to fly into the store, killing the driver. No other injuries were reported. 2 members of the far-right militia group Oath Keepers have been convicted of seditious conspiracy in connection to January 6th. Stuart Rhodes, the group's founder, and Kelly Meggs were found guilty of the Civil War-era statute. The seditious conspiracy case was the most serious to grow out of the Justice Department's investigation into the Capitol attack. The charge carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Body cam footage from a deadly shooting in Oklahoma earlier this month shows a man hiding under a bed pointing a gun at officers. Video released by Oklahoma City Police shows officers searching a trailer, then watch this, lifting up a mattress to find a man pointing a pistol at them. The suspect then killed in a shootout with police. At least one officer was injured. And the world's largest active volcano continuing to erupt. New drone footage shows lava spewing from the top of Mauna Loa. Officials say lava flows are now about 6 miles from the major roadway, but stress there is still no threat to nearby communities. Okay, now to top stories Global Watch and the shocking discovery in the back of an oil tanker in Spain. Take a look at this. 3 stowaways discovered on the rudder of the ship after it arrived in the Canary Islands. The vessel had just completed an 11-day journey from Nigeria. It's unclear how much of that trip the men spent sitting on the rudder. They were hospitalized for dehydration. And the U.S. threatening Mexico over its plan to ban some corn imports. Mexico's president has ordered an end to the imports of genetically modified corn by the end of January 2024. Mexican officials say the move could cut yellow corn imports from the U.S. in half. The U.S. now warning Mexico of legal action if there's no resolution. All right, coming up next, ditching the degrees. With college tuition at an all-time high, is a 4-year degree still worth it or even necessary? We'll bring you the arguments on both sides when we come back. Many Americans see college as the path to a good career, but the student debt crisis looms large for millions. Take a look at this. The average grad borrowing nearly $30,000. That according to U.S. News and World Report. And the U.S. faces a tight labor market. Some employers are dropping the requirement for a college education. All of this as technology continues to change the game when it comes to how someone can make a living. So will young people start rethinking the need for a degree and a 4-year university? CNN Boober is joining Top Story tonight. She's a lead economist for ZipRecruiter. And Beth Hendler-Grunt, she's the founder and CEO of Next Great Step, which provides guidance to college grads on internships and their first big job. Welcome to both of you. So, Sinem, I'm going to start with you. So we first saw this data in the Wall Street Journal, and it came from a company, or a group, I should say, called the Burning Glass Institute, which studies the future of work. And it found a 5% drop in the percentage of job postings requiring at least a 4-year degree. Has this been helping companies navigate the tight labor market, or essentially companies saying, okay, we're going to waive the college degree requirement just to get people in the door?
Well, it absolutely is happening, and that's actually the result of the labor shortages. To reach a wider pool of talent, companies are waiving the college requirement. And as ZipRecruiter, we're able to see this clearly in our data. In 2021, 28% fewer jobs requiring college degree in our platforms compared to 2020. And the same holds for 2022 as well. So more and more companies are moving away from the college degree hiring towards skills-based hiring.
So, Beth, you're a college career coach, essentially, right? So you don't like this story. You don't like the idea of this segment. But I have to ask you, do you think the future is still going to be 4-year universities for all those high schoolers coming out of high school and for kids even that are in kindergarten right now going all the way up? Will college look a lot different by the time they get there?
Look, I think it's not a one-size-fits-all for those young adults who are looking for an education, but clearly there is absolutely opportunities by going on campus, not only the academics, but the opportunity to join clubs, to be a part of activities, to gain skills like leadership, teamwork, your ability to communicate. And those are the exact things that employers are looking for. Also, your opportunity to build a network, which is one of the most effective ways of how you can actually land the job that you desire.
But, Sinem, we put up that stat at the top. The average student has $30,000 in debt. And that just seems so un-American in the sense that this is a country built on capitalism, right, and democracy. And to start out in a negative position. Are companies understanding this, and are they considering this as they bring on young workers?
Well, that's interesting you brought that up, because we are seeing, again, as part of the, as a result of the labor shortages, we are seeing more companies helping the students with their tuition payments as well. So that's one of the benefits that the employees are getting as a result of the labor shortages. And there's definitely still value in getting the college degree. The college graduates have only 1.9% unemployment rate. They're having the highest degree of job security compared to high school graduates or people without a high school degree, which are facing 6.3% unemployment rate right now. And they have higher, lifetime earnings, and they are more likely to be part of the workforce. 70% of college graduates are working right now, compared to only 1 in 2 high school degree holders.
You know, Beth, I want to put something up that ZipRecruiter found, which is that 1 in 5 people, this is another graphic we have, who were hired within the last 6 months went through skills assessments during the hiring process, essentially taking some type of test. So if you were going to work here at NBC News, maybe you'd have to take a writing test or something like that. Is that something that colleges can still help out with, where it would be very tough if you didn't have a degree to sort of score well enough on those assessment exams to get hired?
Absolutely. I think there's an opportunity for universities to really have a better connection with what employers are expecting. And the more they start to see that companies are looking for these assessments, or that you need to be a great writer, you need to have the aptitude to be adaptable and solve problems, the more universities can give that experience through internship, on-site experience through the university, through projects in the classroom, the more that you can connect the dots and be more prepared to help employers in the workplace.
Sinem, do you see a future where they get rid of maybe the 4-year requirement, maybe it's a 2-year requirement, and big companies, say places like Facebook or Google, start training workers right out of high school to bring them into the companies?
It absolutely is taking place right now as we speak. We are seeing more companies valuing the skills and the experience over the degree. Just as Beth mentioned, soft skills and technical hard skills are very important to perform well in those jobs. And employers realize that college is not the only signal that they can filter, screen through these candidates. They're able to assess, the candidates are able to acquire those soft skills through prior experience or technical skills through self-learning platforms.
Beth, do you think the colleges have to get better? I mean, I think this idea, I was talking to our staff about this idea is out there in America that you have to get a 4-year degree, right? And my staff was reminding me that it's not just the universities, it's the corporations who are requiring this. But I wonder if the colleges can do a better job, 1, of making college more affordable, and 2, figuring out a way if we can get kids out of there faster so they're not spending so much money.
Absolutely. I think there's an opportunity. I think even with the pandemic, we see a breaking point where people are not as tolerant of what might have happened in the past and are looking for more creative ways to be educated and be prepared for the workplace, but do it in a way that really also adds value to a company. And how can you solve a problem for an organization? Because ultimately that's what an employer wants. And I think the more higher ed can have a better synergy with the workplace and what companies are expecting, the better off our kids will be.
All right, Beth and Sinem, thank you so much for joining Top Story tonight. We really appreciate it. Coming up, the reunion more than 50 years in the making. A family using a home DNA kit to solve a kidnapping mystery. They're calling it the best Christmas gift ever. That's coming up next. Finally tonight, together again. The home DNA test helping crack one of the country's oldest unsolved kidnapping cases and ending one family's decades-long search for their daughter just in time for the holidays. Valerie Castro has this incredible story.
You open. A reunion 51 years in the making. Alta Apatenko hugging her daughter Melissa for the first time in decades. The now 53-year-old was kidnapped in 1971 at her parents' home in the Dallas-Fort Worth area when she was just 21 months old. Her mother says she put an ad in the paper for a babysitter and hired a woman without ever meeting her. When she was at work, her roommate handed Melissa over to that woman who never returned with the baby.
Do you think you'll see Melissa again?
Well, I can't give up hope. I've got to keep hoping, I guess. I want to see her. I've got to see her again. I just can't give up hope.
Throughout the years, the Highsmiths never lost hope, following lead after lead, doing countless interviews and even a podcast.
I would love to see Melissa again. It wouldn't be the same, of course, all those years missed, but if I can ever talk to her again, that would be wonderful.
Happy 53rd birthday, sis! The family holding their annual vigil just this month to celebrate Melissa's 53rd birthday.
Today is about bringing people together to honor and celebrate her and hope that we can be reunited with her one day.
But what they didn't know, that reunion was right around the corner. A DNA test helping track down Melissa, who had been living just minutes away from them for most of her life, never even knowing she had been kidnapped.
We are so happy, you guys, to have our sister home. We thought this would never happen.
Her sister Victoria says their mother had done several DNA tests before and they all came back negative. But this time, a 23andMe test was a match to one of Melissa's children.
We found it through her children. My mother and father submitted it to Ancestry and 3andMe, and 3 weeks within them submitting it, we found my sister. Like, it was like boom, boom, boom.
Melissa and her parents sitting down with CBS Dallas as she pieced together the first few years of her life.
It is overwhelming, but at the same time, it's just the most wonderful feeling in the world.
And in this video posted to social media, Melissa meeting her biological dad, showing her photos of her 4 siblings, including some born after her disappearance that she has never met.
It's just amazing meeting her. When I met her for the first time, it was like looking into myself. She looks like me. She looks like us. She looks like all of us. And she's overjoyed to be in our life.
Our family in the last 3 or 4 days have just been so excited and filled with joy and tears and laughter.
The family making up for lost years, celebrating the holidays together for the first time ever.
My family hasn't celebrated a Christmas all together with all of us in over 20 years. This will be the first Christmas that every single member of our family will be there. It's the best Christmas gift ever.
All right, Valerie Castro joins us now on set here at Top Story. So, Valerie, I guess the big question everyone's going to have is, where's the babysitter and what happened to her?
Well, right now, we don't know what happened to the woman who allegedly kidnapped Melissa so many years ago, but the Fort Worth Police Department issued a statement to NBC News saying that the criminal statute of limitations actually expired 20 years after Melissa turned 18. So at this point, they can't make any arrest, but they say they are still looking into the case and they will be conducting their own DNA test.
And I understand you have some new reporting on Melissa's mother. She's breathing an additional sigh of relief.
Right. So the family tells NBC Dallas that her mother, Alta, did face some scrutiny from authorities all those years ago. At one point, they may have even considered her a suspect in this case. She, of course, felt guilty over what happened. But tonight, she's just thankful that her daughter is safe. She knows where she is. And the family says they couldn't be happier.
You can't even imagine that, right? She loses her child and then she gets put in the spotlight all these years, but finally they're together. Okay, Valerie, thank you. An amazing story. We thank you for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.